Welcome to the Elevate Your Equity podcast, where we, as married busy professionals, leverage real estate investing to unlock the 3+1 degrees of freedom: health, location, time, and financial.
Today, we have a power couple in the house. We've got Sergio and Corinne Altamare. It's great to have you guys here. How are you today?
Doing great.
Doing good.
Awesome. So for those of you who do not know Sergio and Corinne, you guys are in for a treat here. After transitioning into real estate as a side business in 2012, Sergio partnered with his wife, Corinne, to start Hearthfire Holdings, a boutique real estate investment and property management company. And in just 8 short years, Hearthfire Holdings has built a portfolio of more than 50 million in assets under management and syndicated over 12 million as well, returning more than 2 million in profit and 25% IRR to investors. Very impressive. Property types have spanned from small multifamily, commercial, retail, and self-storage properties. Sergio has also flipped houses and rehab properties and multifamily developments. And also what's not in your bio here is I know that both of you guys have a corporate background. Is that correct?
Yes,
A little
sir.
bit.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. Well, what I wanted to start with today was how you guys got to where you are, because you both have amassed quite a portfolio working together. And so maybe you guys can tell us a story about how you got there.
Yeah, it really started with, I had a false start in real estate back in 2007. I was living at home, decided to buy a duplex, live in one unit, house hack, and rent out the other unit and that kind of thing. That went to hell. It was a long story why that was a poorly executed plan. Met Corinne in 2012. We were both working for the Federal Reserve at the time. She was buying her first multifamily property, doing exactly the same thing, except this one was actually going to be successful, all except the part of moving into the unit that she was going to live in. So along the way, we moved in together. She bought the property. During our dating, we were spending nights and weekends renovating, painting, doing all kinds of stuff at the building. My tech background, her just, know-how of getting things done. Next thing you know, we're managing a property. Following year, we bought another property. And then after that, we had access to more properties than we knew what to do with. And we started syndicating. Her dad was instrumental in teaching us the concept of syndication. And we poured ourselves into books and bigger pockets. And from there, we started managing other properties. Her parents brought a portfolio over to us. We started managing all kinds of things, grew that portfolio about 100 and some units. We're actually transitioning away from that business now. We transitioned into self-storage back in 2018. As we expected a market downturn, we wanted to get into larger apartment buildings. We found that for the underwriting that we were doing, the numbers didn't make sense. I always say that I don't know how some multifamily investors make sense these days either. But anyway, we transitioned into self-storage and bought our first property in 2019. And then we kind of read Who Not How, started, recognizing that it was only just the two of us and we needed some help and support. And, then from there, now we have 13 properties, a few under contract, over 50 million in assets, and we're looking to evolve again. Along the way, we obviously quit the day job. She quit in 2016. I quit in 2017. Our little girl was born the same year. So as I say, the rest is history.
Wow, awesome. So 2017 must have been a very interesting year for you guys. That sounds like there's a lot of stuff going on back then.
I don't think I remember any of it. It was just a matter of getting through.
You hear from people that kids change things and you're always like, oh yeah, sure. Okay. You'll be a little sleep deprived, but no, it's just the recognition, the responsibility that comes with it and everything else, not to mention the sleep deprivation, especially for her. So it was a monumental year in a lot of ways. Certainly trying, but we made it through.
Yeah, of course. I think that's the only thing that you can do when you have all that kind of stuff going on is just try to tread water with all that. Now, I wanted to ask you guys too, is where did you guys get your spark for real estate investing? And it sounds like Corinne, your family, it was in your family for a little bit, but I wanted to back up and understand where the commercial real estate passion came from, because most people start with single family homes, or maybe like, partnering up with some other individuals, or maybe both of that. But did yours come from your family, or how did the interest in commercial real estate start?
Really from a risk mitigation standpoint, in a single family home, you have one tenant. If they move out or if anything goes wrong, you're sunk, right? So making the first jump, at least into the triplex, made more sense, because as an owner occupant buyer, all I needed was one other tenant to carry my expenses. And then what we experienced as we scaled our small multifamily portfolio is that it just made more sense to have as many doors under one roof as possible. And add on to that the much more simpler management model that self-storage has, and you have really a true winner there, for me at least, since I was spending much more time in the trenches in the day-to-day. As far as my start, my previous career was in the arts, and so for me, real estate investing in general was purely a vehicle for me to have lifestyle flexibility and not be chained to my W-2 job if and when I made the choice that I didn't want to continue showing up to my cubicle every day. So that was the foundational driver for me. And then once I got into it, and once we started building our business, the daily fun of there always being a new challenge to figure out and design an answer to is what hooked me, and of course my teammate, and being able to work with this quality human being every day.
Of course, of course.
Mhm.
And that's a good way to rack up some points there too. So I like that. That's great. Let me ask you though, did you both have a moment in time where you realized that real estate was right for you? Like, was there anything that clicked early on, if you can remember that moment in time? Because I know, we talked about scaling and why it worked, but I'm looking for the emotional part of like, oh, this is the solution that I'm looking for. Do you guys remember that moment at all?
I don't know. I think it was less about an emotional connection, and we're both results oriented, meaning that you hit a hammer, you see the nail go in type of thing,
Yeah.
right? And so you can see the results. So when we bought the first property, we were naturally drawn to, let's, paint it, let's do this, let's do that. And then from there, it was the next thing, right? And the next property. And so there was a continuous start this, get this done. And quite honestly, that's our MO now, is every acquisition is a new start stop. We're both project managers by trade. Corinne was an IT project manager. I did that for a lot of years. So I think that was a natural progression for us. We didn't know anything about quote unquote starting a business or it necessarily being about real estate. I think ultimately I'm a numbers guy. When we started to underwriting and putting numbers on spreadsheets and started to figure out how to model and forecast things, that got exciting because you can start to see that there was a passive, component to it. I mean, the one thing that we did right from the start was every property we bought, we used tools to underwrite it and did it properly. I see people regularly that just pull up a spreadsheet, jot down some income, some expense numbers, and they think that's it. But if you model it out, it's like, no, there's so much to it. There's, you got to model it to understand where the equity appreciation is. What happens if this expense, you get a hot water heater that blows up, what happens to your revenue? So I was infatuated by the numbers. She had a good vision of, what it looks like to get it done. What the placing tenants, providing a quality home. So there was I think it was a good partnership from that perspective as well.
Yeah, I think that that's pretty accurate there. I can tell right now that you guys have a lot of synergies there. And that's kind of where I wanted to pivot to right now before we jump into what I really want to talk about later on. But can you tell us a little bit about what it's like to work with your spouse in the space? Obviously, Sophie and I do that as well. But I imagine there's a lot of hat switching going on. There's a lot of times you're like, okay, I'm acting as a partner, and then I'm acting as a spouse, and then I'm acting as a friend. Maybe can you guys give us a little overview of how you guys treat that, or what happens when you guys run your business and personal lives this way?
I want to hear your answer.
I would say that we are still actively figuring it out, right? We have been running our business together now for 10 years. And our roles and how we work together have shifted throughout various phases during that time as we've gone through different life stages and as our business has evolved and grown, as the core components of our team and different business lines have shifted. So I would say in the early days, it was both of us doing all the things all the time. And now, particularly within the past 3 years, as things have really grown so exponentially. I mean, we went from one storage facility in 2019 to acquiring 10 in 2021, and we're probably on track for 7 this year. So particularly within the past 3 years, we've been experimenting a lot amidst all of that growth, and we've tried a couple different things. And including each of us running independently in our own swim lane, if you will, right? Him very much as the visionary, and me trying to find the right seat. I'm not the finance seat. I've played in the operations seat. I've played in the business development seat. Also, if any of your listeners are familiar with Rocket Fuel and EOS, the integrator seat. And what we keep coming back to is that we work best together. As wild as that sounds, right? You would expect perhaps a lot of, I don't know what you might expect, but we truly do at the end of the day work best when we're closer, when we're more involved or more connected at the hip. So maybe, at the end of the day, we're true co-CEOs or co-visionaries, because we have been working together our entire relationship. We started dating. I mean,
That's
truly,
right.
we started dating, April or May of 2012, and I closed on the triplex in September. I mean, we have truly been, and that's when we started building out our business together. We bought a building, built a business, bought another building, and then decided to get married. So we have known nothing other than being deeply entrenched in all of the day-to-day.
Yeah, I mean that's you don't stop and think about it, right? So we were kind of like just kicking ass and taking names, and even to this day, and it has cycled, right? I mean, anybody who's started or run a business can tell you that what works at one level doesn't work at another level. And so it is evolutionary, and we keep coming back to, I mean, there's lots of, as one might expect, differences, arguments, what have you. But really at the end of the day, it really comes down to work together, understand what needs to be done, and then come up with a plan. I mean, for me, she's a really strong. Um, I get a lot more confidence by validating ideas, and she gets a lot of confidence by executing on what some of these ideas are, and that's really been what it keeps coming back to, and it's pretty cool.
I really like your answer, especially, Corinne, when you started out, you're like, it's an evolving thing. And I think that that's always going to be the case, right? You're always learning about each other and the business and yourself. And
Well, and
it's
that's got to be
very,
true for relationships,
oh
right? I mean,
yeah,
yeah, you're not the same person if you're like any of us that's interested in personal growth and development. You can't grow without change, right? And as you grow and change, it's imperative that the person next to you grow and change along with you. So we are both driven by personal growth and our relationship growth and everything that we stands for. So it has to be evolutionary. If not, I mean, you end up as a couple and one is going in one direction and one is another. And then we're just a statistic.
That's not a good direction to go, is when you have these separating paths, right? And yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that you have all these dynamics happening at the same time. And it makes sense to me because you guys have a personal relationship, you have a business, you have growth, you have yourselves going on, and all of those things have to be in balance. So it's no wonder to me that you guys are spending so much time together, which is really, that makes a lot of sense, especially through the quantum leaps that you guys have been making in the last 5 years, even, 5 years ago was 2017. So it's just really incredible, what you can achieve in 5 years. And any event, I wanted to move on here and I wanted to talk more about the mindset piece of this, right? Can you guys tell us a time, where you took a negative experience and turned it into a positive one?
This morning.
Yeah.
Well, that's really fresh. I'll take it.
No, I mean, anybody that's in real estate or property management and tenant relations or even owner relations can tell you war stories. And it's really, to me, it's always asking two questions, right? My background is IT. So root cause analysis is, that's part of our DNA. And it's always asking, why did something happen? Pro or con, right? Good or bad, why? And then how did it happen, right? And for me, that's like anytime we have a, I don't know, you can pick a situation when it came to our first few hires for our first storage facility. Okay. The person didn't work out. Well, why didn't they work out? Right? Is it because of X, Y, or Z? And you keep trying and testing ideas, and then you end up figuring out, okay, why? Perhaps it was because they weren't trained properly, or we didn't give the right expectation. It's just, okay, then the question is, how do we address that? And that's just ongoing, right? I mean, that's really, and a lot of it is human behavior analysis, right? So understanding who we are, our relationship, who we are individually, is continuously saying, okay, why do I feel this way? Why do I think that way? So to me, that's the two questions. I don't know if you have any specifics, instances, but it's been, we keep talking about the book we're going to write on a lot of the crap that we've experienced. I mean, that's.
So something that we started planning a number of months ago was our first ever live event. And so we had it set up for this summer. And as I was going through the marketing and all of that for it, realized that the why, I had a low registration. And so I was like, why? And I forgot to ask one fundamental question of my core attendee list, because we initially were planning this for our investors as a, thank you for being with us. It's been 10 years. Yeah. We want to throw a big party. We wanted to also include you coming out to see the storage facilities and getting to meet some other members of our team. I failed to ask if our investors would be interested in joining us for a party and or have the time during this very busy summer season when everybody is really catching up from years of COVID lockdowns, as well as getting kids back to school, because the date was like right before, I guess, the beginning of school season, which with a 5-year-old, I'm just now starting to realize is important because she's starting school yeah. for her first time ever, coming up here soon. So realizing that and speaking with and getting a hold of, as I was asking these why questions and reaching out to my core list and being like, hey, are we going to see you? If not, why? That's where I remember to ask the question why. And just realizing that, yes, people were very much interested in, but I needed to find a better time and really give folks much more advanced notice, right? So that people could plan days off from work. I've been in my own business for 10 years. The idea of having to submit for days off from work and negotiate that with management, I've been out of that world for too long. And so there were just certain questions. So I would say that was a negative experience as far as having to postpone the original scheduled date. We're going to be having it in the near future. But the overall positive of that was being able to work through not only some of my fear about just proactively reaching out to folks and being like, hey, we want to throw a party. I want to see you and your family there. What's going to work for you? How can I make this the most easily accessible for you? As well as other folks that we want to do business with in the future, right? And so for me, it was a big learning lesson of working through some of my more deeply entrenched introvert tendencies and just getting more comfortable with actively reaching out to folks and having those conversations, as well as also in the course of postponing the event and sending out those announcements that actually spurred a number of people saying, oh man, I was in the middle of trying to negotiate getting off and I had made these arrangements with the dog sitter and I had booked my refundable train ticket to be there. And so now I hear from folks that they were making plans to be there. And so what the positive also from that is getting that reinforcement of folks that did actively reach out and were like, hey, I saw your notice, really wanted to be there. Let me know when the next one's going to be, because now those are my core people as I look to reschedule and get the new dates fixed. That's going to be my first list of folks that I reach out to and be like, hey, these are the dates that we're looking at. Does that work for you? Great. Because we want it to be a fantastic and personal, really intimate experience for us to really connect with these key folks in our life.
Yeah, thank you for the example. That really painted a lot of color on the image for me of what you guys were talking about, and I can totally understand that now. So thank you for that. And I have to also add too, the fact that you've already gone through the mechanics of booking the venue, getting the logistics all planned out. Imagine how much easier it's going to be the second time around, because you're going to know what it's going to take in advance to already get that done. So the second go around is always easier, and I think that that's going to benefit you guys greatly. And thank you for sharing that very personal experience. We really appreciate that.
All the vendors have been great to work with, and this is also super leveraging who, not how. Like I now have a much better idea of a couple more who's that I'm going to need on my team for version 2.
Excellent.
Yep.
So a similar question to this is, it's as far as taking lessons learned, right? We touched on this a little bit. You just said that there's some lessons learned there. Do you two have any sort of process around, these things that come up throughout the day and throughout the course of your business life cycle, right? Do you have a way of capturing these lessons learned? Like it could be something as simple as you two doing a debrief every week, or maybe doing the one sheet every month, or how do you, because this is a selfish question for me, like, because I have a lot of lessons learned happening, and I'd want to know what your process is for being able to actually take the, mistakes and the good things that happened and extract the gems so that you can carry them forever.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing that we have is transparency and communication. I mean, we talk a lot. I mean, this is every night it's inevitable, right? Because we don't sit there and watch TV, and not that we don't have a life, but I mean, we communicate a lot. And again, it goes back to the why and how. So there's a lot of, in the IT world, we call it postmortems, right? You had a crash, you had something that happened, you get together and say, what happened and what do we do about it, right? So for our business and our company, we're doing a lot of postmortems, right? Every time we have an acquisition, we close on a deal, we get together with the entire team. What worked really well? What didn't? How do we fix it, right? So we've focused a lot on processes. Even within our own personal life, we focus a lot on that, right? And even just as recently as this past week, it's like, okay, well, how do we make sure that we get out of the door on time? Okay, what if let's have a mutually agreed upon 7:45, 8 o'clock, we are out the door. So I'm not asking, are you ready? You're ready, that kind of thing. And we do that regularly. So I don't think that you don't necessarily need to over engineer it. You just have to communicate expectations, communicate what is the desired outcome, and really be in a mode of how to improve and grow. And I think that you get a big belly. Well, why did I get a big belly, and how do I fix it? Right. So it's a continuous, I mean, it plays along the same lines of what we were talking about earlier. It's just a continuous process of asking the right questions, and the right questions are really, really important, because if it's, we have a disagreement, it's conflict resolution type of thing. And we practice on ourselves and each other, but that works when it comes to parenting. It works, coming to friends, family, relationships in general. It's to me, that's the most important part, is the transparency and communication.
The one sheet is a fantastic tool. So hopefully you talk about that with your audience on previous shows and whatnot. And we'll be having our first family board meeting later this evening. So we're going to start introducing some of that structure with Stella. So we'll see how our 5-year-old does at the family board meeting.
If I was a 5-year-old and if I was your kid, I would be very excited for that. That'd be very
Any
cool.
opportunity to go nuts on a whiteboard, she's game. So
of course. Now, Sergio, when you were talking, the one analogy that came to mind that I have to share with the audience is that a plane going from Seattle to Miami is only on course 2% of the time, but yet it gets there 100% of the time. And the reason is these little course corrections, right? Like you have a gust of wind that pushes you off course and you just got to correct, right? And for many reasons, you have all these different course corrections. And these conversations is what I liken to that, right? You guys are always talking, making these course corrections. And as long as you're aligned in your vision, you're going to get from Seattle to Miami safely, almost every single person, almost all the time. And so I just wanted to paint that picture. Hopefully that's accurate for what you guys are trying to describe.
No, it is. And when it comes to, looking at it from a big picture macro level, right? So we always ask, and a lot of people in our world always asks, like, what are you working towards? What's your purpose? What's enough? And where we are at now is we're still growing, right? Growing as individuals, we're growing as a couple. And, you don't look at a guy like, I don't know, Tiger Woods or Tom Brady. They don't say, hey, I'm going to be good enough when I do this, right? It's you get to that level and now you establish another level. And so for us, it's all about, continuous growth and self-improvement. Not that you don't perfect life, right? But you can continuously, you're either growing or dying, right? There's no kind of in between. And that's the mode that we operate from.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you guys for sharing. I wanted to continue here, going down this personal development dynamic as husband and wife as well. What have you guys learned in working with each other? What have you learned about yourselves individually?
Oh man, that's well, for me, I can tell you that what I've learned is the biggest thing is what I know or assume or think is true needs to be tested regularly, right? It's anybody that's worked with people, and not just talking about Corinne and I, but our entire team. It's the ask for something and getting the results that you're looking for. So for me, it's been a matter of recognizing that what goes on in my head doesn't necessarily come out of my mouth, or the expectations are different. So I'm constantly asking, how can I set clearer expectations when it comes to our business, but also myself, right? What is it that I'm given any given thing? What am I trying to achieve? I recently had an epiphany where I jacked up my finger pretty good doing some plumbing work, and that's a whole nother story. But I asked,
I was going to say, why are you doing plumbing work?
Thank you, Derek.
So there's always, right, there's the whole, see something that needs to be done and get it done. In some cases, I don't have plumbing. It's one of the, I don't have patience. So I'm like, I just, the hell with it, I'll do it myself type of thing. But then I realized through bringing other contractors do different things, that it's not that I need to do it. I want to see it done. Right. And so for me, it's about setting expectations of what is the end goal. The end goal is to complete XYZ project for whatever reason. but doesn't necessarily mean that I have to do it. And I deal with the whole contractor thing. I mean, everybody knows that whole game that needs to be played. But I learned that about myself, is that and I'm still getting better at it, is setting realistic expectations and a time horizon that doesn't just meet my needs, but is actually realistic for the people that actually have to do it and whatnot.
Right. What about you, Corinne? And I appreciate that. That's awesome. And what about you, Corinne?
I would say the incredible capacity that is within each of us human beings when we set our minds right and allow the rest of the noise to disappear, when we're in the right role and have the right mental focus on what we're truly best at doing or most interested in doing, and letting everything else fall away, what we're able to accomplish and who we are able to be. And I don't think that's not specific to me or Serge. I think that's within each of us, every single one of us. And there is so much noise in our current world that is the opportunity to refuse to let other things control your mind and your body and your heart, and instead understand that you have limitless potential within you if you take the right approach to it.
That's beautiful. Thank you guys for sharing the very personal notes there. And I can relate with both of those things. And I think any listener out there can take the wisdom that you guys have just given us and run with that. And so I want to just thank you for sharing that. Very personal.
Plumber and the poet.
I love it. I love it. Okay, guys. So I'm gonna because we're getting towards the end of the show, and I still want to ask you just a few specific industry related questions, because you guys are experts in the space, right? And so we'll go ahead and do that. Well, maybe this is a midway question before we get to our final one. Do you guys find that scaling up where you are right now was a challenge? And if you do, what advice do you have for people who are just starting out, and maybe for those who are on their way or somewhere in between?
The way that I would best equate it to our experience, and it's in just about every book that you read on business, and whether it's scaling up, it's whatever, it's about scale. And when it's the two of us, and there are there's a whole lot of roles. It's everything from IT to HR to accounting, whatever. When it's the two of us involved, we can each take a big chunk of that and run with our respective lanes. And the handoffs are pretty easy because you're handing it off, you're within yourself, or at most to a partner next to me. As we've hit different levels of growth, especially where it required bringing in more people resources, is where what we thought was a process was not a process, because it's how I did it independently.
Right.
And now that system or that process either needs to be defined, right? And even when it does get defined and then you add more people to it, you find that it needs to be further refined, or it's just broken. So to me, the biggest thing that we've discovered is, with every level of growth, even if you have a system or process, it will be strained, it will break. And it's not a fundamental problem necessarily with the business. You just have to continuously evolve and grow. And most people that start a business, if you've read E-Myth, that you're a technician and you basically give yourself a job, it really comes down to, you get to a certain point and you don't recognize that you need different systems or processes. People get frustrated when it comes to the people management. They say, the hell with this, I'm going to go back to being small. It's just going to be me and that's it. And they shrink. And so we've kind of looked at it and keep asking again the why and how, and it keeps coming down to, with every new wrinkle, with every level of growth comes an evolution. What worked before is not going to work in the future, and we have to continuously grow, evolve, read different books, listen to, coaching has been instrumental for us, for the people that have been there, done that. If you've never experienced it, you don't know what success looks like. And that's really important. So for me, it's really, especially when it comes to people, the more people you add, the more things break down, the more you have to change and continuously fix it for the next level.
As far as scaling up goes, what advice do you have for people who are just starting out or starting to scale or looking to scale or are already on their way?
Yeah, so my super simple answer to that versus his. There are 1,001 ways to scale up and be successful and grow a business. You can do every single thing, right? Like shiny object syndrome to the max. The one thing that I would recommend, if anyone is looking for a recommendation, is to be really crystal clear on where work is lightest for you, where you most love being, where you're happiest inhabiting this world, and where you really just feel like you are absolutely in the right place, and find people that are everything else. And I'm not saying partner with the first person that comes along. Absolutely do massive due diligence and make sure you've got all of the paper protection that you need should, God forbid, something go wrong. But I think we have acknowledged to one another that if we had outsourced isn't the right word, but if we had acknowledged the need for bringing in a strong partner sooner, our journey would have been even further along at this point.
Yeah, I love this answer. I love both of your guys' answers because it has to deal with knowing who you are as an individual. That's the root of it, right? Is if you know who you are and what you need, then that's all that you need in order to scale. You just have to act on that too. There's a process there, a feedback loop, because everyone's evolving all the time and changing. But I think the more you know yourself, the more you'll be able to either get people out there to do it or have that perspective. Like you said, Sergio, you're either growing or you're dying. And so I love your guys' answers. So my last question before we head into the rapid round here is real estate industry related. And I know that it's Q3 of 2022 right now as of this recording. So I'm not asking for you guys to give a crystal ball or anything. But I'd like to see, from your guys' perspective as industry leaders, what are you guys seeing in the commercial real estate space? Maybe you can comment from the self-storage perspective or whatever you feel comfortable answering. I just want to get your guys' insight as to what you're seeing right now.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting, right? Because obviously working for the Federal Reserve, for 22 years, I followed and studied the economy, and we look at it both from a micro trend, macro trend. What's interesting is that there's been a lot of talk of really bad downturns or a bad downturn coming, and recessions obviously happen as part of a normal cycle. We've had obviously inflation, supply chain strain, and all that's impacted real estate in general, not as much in self-storage, but the interest rates have gone up, but mostly impacting residential real estate and commercial real estate. We haven't seen a huge spike in interest rates. As of today, we're probably hovering at around 5% interest. It's not that far off. It doesn't make a big dent in the numbers. We are in a technical recession. We are seeing signs of inflation at least topping out the rate of growth. I personally think, we talk to brokers, we talk to lenders regularly. Nobody has panicked. Buyers and sellers are a little bit further apart in some asset class. I can't speak for multifamily, but in self-storage, we talk to brokers regularly, some big brokers, and they're not seeing that. They've got a tremendous number of deals falling apart. Some of the larger deals that have, swap rates and interest rate sensitivity are being retraded a little bit. In terms of crystal ball type of stuff, we're learning to go where the market is and respond to where the market is, not try to predict the market. And where it'll be a year from now, don't know, but we're not seeing any signs of the wheels falling off or deterioration when it comes to the business of self-storage. So, it's obviously sharpened the pencil. Our underwriting's tighter. We're doing a lot more sensitivity analysis, risk analysis, but overall, we're not seeing that it's going to come crashing down, at least not now. 2 months ago, 3 months ago, in fact, at the last storage conference, there were talks that about this time of the year in August or so that we were going to see a huge market slowdown, and we're not seeing that. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's that's kind of the roundabout way to say we're not panicking.
The only thing I would say is that at the end of the day, we cannot directly impact the economy at large, right? But what we can control is our own individual economy and our own household and our business, obviously. So rather than letting too much of the fear mongering or the other or all of the experts mess up our heads too much, right? Take in enough wisdom and insights to be aware of what's going on, and then otherwise hold true to our principles and our fundamentals that at the end of the day, we know we are confident in and that allow us to sleep well at night and just continuing on our path.
Yeah, that's great. Very well said, both of you guys. Some words of advice that everyone should take to heart. And one thing that I wanted to add to that before we move on to our rapid round here is that, a lot of the deals that maybe you had mentioned been falling apart. It's not a terrible amount of them. It's not like every single one of them has been falling apart. And there is retrading happening. I've been seeing that, but it's becoming more and more of like an even playing field, right? The seller's expectations are still pretty high, but it's starting to come down. And case in point, with the deal that we're under in contract right now on, we had to build in a interest rate risk premium. So if the rate goes up, if the 10-year treasury goes up by 10 basis points, then we're asking for $1,000 per door price reduction as a seller credit on the back end. And we're transparent with that with our lender so that the lender can say, okay, well then, that reduces the loan amount. And that's okay with us because we want to hold our DSCR levels very healthy. So we're doing all these things. So all I'm saying is that if you listeners are out there, and whether you're in the single family space or you're in the retail space or industrial or commercial or self-storage, anything, right? There is always a way to make something happen. And if the deal is good enough and it's a win-win situation for both the buyer and the seller, it's going to happen. And I think over the long term, the maxim is the longer you hold real estate, the better it is. With some exceptions, but generally, if you can hold on to anything through a recession and have good fundamentals, like what you guys were talking about, both on the household and on the business, then you should be able to hold and pick your exit whenever you want to. So just wanted to underscore that point there about both what you guys are saying. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
Well, cool, guys. We could be going on and talking about this stuff for hours, but I know that you're very busy individuals. So what we're going to do is we're going to move to the rapid round part of the show, which is 5 questions that we ask every one of our guests, and they're meant to be answered in 30 seconds or less, and they're for each of you. So if you guys are ready, we're just going to rapidly ask them to you if you're ready.
Okay.
Who's first? Is it both of us together or what?
Both together.
All right.
All right. Question number 1. What book has had the biggest impact on you and why, outside of Rich Dad, Poor Dad or the Bible?
For me, Atlas Shrugged. And why? Because whatever your take on Ayn Rand's philosophy, she elevates human potential to above our day-to-day.
For me,
thank you for sharing.
Yep.
Faster than normal. That gave me a way to look at what otherwise is considered ADD, and me being a visionary gave me a little bit more clarity in life.
Great. I for sure thought that Who Not How was coming, but I love both of those books. I haven't read either of them, but they are going on my Amazon list right now.
I'm going to check in with you in a month.
Uh-oh, accountability. Number 2, if people wanted to emulate your success, what would you say is the first actionable thing that they could do to follow in your footsteps, according to each of you?
I would say be disciplined in understanding your trade and your craft. We, from the start, we were very disciplined in underwriting. Our strategies were clearly defined. We didn't do anything half-assed.
Mine would be, don't be afraid to start. Jump in, get started, try it out, adjust as you go.
And those 2 ideas right there, listeners, that's all you need. Love it. Thank you, guys. Number 3, what is one tool, process, or hack in the last 3 to 6 months that you've employed has helped you save time and or effort? And that can be on the personal or on the business side.
For me, it would be, instead of creating to-do lists as it relates to individual tasks, roll it up to strategic objectives. So instead of, it being a make the bed, it is, clean up the house type of thing. And really, for me, at my level, it's really big picture type of stuff. So I don't have this overwhelming long run on list. That would be my idea.
Right.
I've been developing my daily meditation practice. I'm not at daily yet, but I'm about probably 5 out of 7. And sometimes it's just 3 minutes. So my one thing, the one tool is doing that, because in the process of stopping and meditating and doing less, at the end of that session, I realize what I actually need to be working on.
Beautiful. And let me ask both of you for that, because this is a tool-based question. Are you guys using anything like, Asana or, for you, Insight Timer?
I use Insight Timer. Yeah.
Yeah, Insight Timer.
Also
is
use
awesome.
Insight Timer. For me, it's a combination of Google Tasks and Reclaim.ai.
Very cool. Love it. I need to ask you about that later on. Question number 4. If the people that you know had to describe you each with one word, what word do you think that would be?
For me, probably driven.
I can see that.
I'm struggling with this one. I'm sorry.
Smart.
I would say that that's fairly accurate, unless, Corinne, you wanted to add something to that.
I don't have anything with this one. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to take a pass.
There you go. It's smart then. Smart it is. It's in the books. Number 5. What small thing do most people not know about you?
Small thing. Is it a small thing that I graduated college as an adult in 2013?
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like that. That's pretty unique.
Sorry, the question is, what small thing do people not know about me? Well, if I share it here, then they will. So that's kind of defeating the purpose.
I know, right? So you have to dial it back. Maybe you give them half the truth or half of something.
So I spent some summer times abroad in Europe backpacking, and did that whole hostel and sleeping on the trains overnight kind of thing. And it was a wonderful experience. I made it out alive, and I'm really glad that I had it.
That's awesome. So cool. Well, Sergio, Corinne, thank you guys so much for coming on the show. I hope you had as much fun as I did. This was a blast. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no. So believe it or not, this is the first podcast that we've ever
done
recorded together.
Yeah.
So
you're kidding. Wow, you guys are naturals. So that's really great. But before we go, why don't you tell the listeners, either one of you, how they can find out more about what you have going on and what you have available, if you have any gifts for them.
Yeah, the easiest thing is investwithsergio.com. I think there's an Invest with Corinne as well, CORINN.com. That is the gateway to all of our social, LinkedIn, our website, and all of that. And connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very accessible. We're very active, whether it be the Invest Her community. Corinne, also an author, and the only woman in the room, she co-authored a book with a number of wonderful women. For me, been active in the Bigger Pockets 545 episode. So I think, but anyway, that's it.
All right.
Nothing else to add there.
Very cool. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show. And for you listeners out there who have listened all the way to this point in the podcast, we want to thank you guys for that. And please, wherever you're listening or watching this, please subscribe, comment, thumbs up, or just interact with us in any way you can on the social media pages, because if we do that, we're able to appease those algorithm gods, and then they're able to expose us to more and more individuals, and then we can have excellent people, more and more excellent people like Sergio and Corinne here on the show. So thank you, dear listeners. And also, Corinne, Sergio, thank you once again for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. This is Derek. We'll see you next week. I'm signing off for the day. Take care.